But yeah, did you want to talk a little more about the grades while we're here, or did I jump too far ahead?
No, I mean, like, I know at the beginning of the season, and we graded, we kind of went through the roster, and graded players kind of off on the fly, and then pulled out the old GPA calculator and calculated a final grade for positional groups: point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, and center, just based off of specific positions in groupings to talk about the 20 guys at camp.
Mm-hmm.
So we we have grades out on Cap City Crown. That they're not a consensus between Tony and I, but I think we should kind of go through and maybe based off of that as a baseline, kind of go through and grade some of these positional groups in the same light, taking into account how the season went and where they are in terms of what our expectations were and stuff like that. Does that sound okay?
Let's do it.
Okay. Well, I guess it would be important to. Do you want to start with the point guards, or we want to get chaotic here?
No. Let's start on the point guards.
So I guess we would start with De'Aaron Fox.
Yeah, I think Fox, for me, he's an A. He's not putting up the craziest numbers. He's around almost 25 points a game. I was kind of hoping to see him around like 29, pushing 30, like on the upper side of 20. I get he's doing more than just scoring. He's becoming a leader and an all-star on the third best team in the West. But I don't know. I just wish he would score more. He had that bad stretch. I don't care if his foot was hurt or not. He had a bad stretch in the season and, kind of hurt his all-star chances. And he was an injury reserve all-star. He wasn't a straight-up all-star. So I'm going to give him an A. I think that's where he is.
I love how we have to really point out like, well, that's why I'm going to give him an A. I think an A is still awesome. And I totally agree with you.
True.
The only reason I go A+ on the thing is because when I looked at the beginning of the season, I was like, there's a few things you'd really like to see De'Aaron Fox do. And I would like to see De'Aaron Fox do. And I think everybody would like to see him do. It was get off to a good start, be a leader on a winning team, and make an all-star team. And throw in things like that, have a better commitment to the defensive end, find ways to be a more dynamic impact on the floor. In a lot of ways, he's checked all the boxes. I guess I would just say that, like, from that standpoint, he just kind of gets a little extra credit from the standpoint of what people expected and really thought that he needed to do this season. I mean, he kind of like checked a lot of, if not all those boxes. And I think that just kind of puts him over the top for his personal grade. I still think that, like, I would make the argument that Sabonis is the team MVP.
Mm-hmm.
That the whole thing kind of collapses without Sabonis. But Fox, in a lot of ways, is just looking at him as a player. He did exactly what you needed him to do, and he made the All-Star team. And we both know he should have been. He shouldn't have been forced to be an injury reserved.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that a lot. There's the one thing that obviously stands out is that stretch with the foot bruise, because I kind of maybe I was really leaning into the fact that I gave him an A+, but I took it from the standpoint of, like, think about the leadership that shows that he wanted to play through it. I totally also see, and I don't really even disagree with the fact that it's like, well, you could show a lot of leadership by getting out ahead of it too. And I think he would do that if he was forced to the situation again. I think he learned from that. So I think that stands as a really good reason. I wouldn't disagree with you, and I would actually probably come down, and if we're going to be grading these positional groups, I think I'm going to mark them down as an A as we try to grade these positional groups. I won't try to yank you up towards the A+. Because I think I'm going to have to pull more weight on some other player.
Okay, fair enough. So Fox, he's at an A, and that will bring us to the backup, Davion Mitchell. Man, I want to go around like a C+, really. I mean, I don't know. I'm interested to hear what you have to say. I forget your ranking exactly.
I gave him a C. I gave him a
C.
And it's for the reason that he's done. Expectations were already pretty high for him on defense because he's just so talented. And he's not taking away from anything. He's the best defender on the team. He's changed games, set tones, done a lot of things off the bench with defense that nobody's going to notice by looking at a stat sheet. I totally get that. I love Davion Mitchell. I love watching him play. He's one of my favorite players to watch on the team. But it's not like he's going in there and it's not like he's going to be on an all defensive team this year. I don't think. I feel like he didn't get recognized at the Rising Stars Challenge, despite the fact that there were 3 teams, right? I just feel like it's not.
No, it was actually 4 teams.
4. Well, there you go.
I said 3 last time, but one was like all G Leaguers. So,
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
anyways,
but my point is just like the defense. Like if I was just rating his defense alone, I'd give him an A. Like it's been great, but I kind of expected to give him an A. You know, it's in the same way that I gave Sabonis an A. I would never expect anything less. But the offense, it's just, and you can attribute it to the fact that maybe he doesn't 100% feel comfortable with his role, or it's something that he's still kind of adjusting to. But the offense has just not been there. And I think one of the biggest things, the thing that probably made it easy to give him a C rather than a C plus, because you're talking about such a high peak with his defense and such a low trough with his offense. It just goes down into a valley in terms of his game. And so that kind of balances out into being an average overall. But the thing that kept him from being a C plus in my eyes was that game in Indiana where he had a chance to just really do something. And he bailed Indiana out. He let it be 4-on-5. And he just never forced his will on offense. He was not driving. I think 4 out of his 5 field goal attempts were just like 3-point attempts. He never put any pressure on the defense. On the defense. He never made himself known to be a threat with the ball in his hands. And I think he only had 1 assist. It was the last thing you wanted to see him do, especially in a situation that he's historically been good in. And I hate to make that dictate a grade for 57 games by pinpointing it on one game, but I think that was a pretty good illustration of why a lot of people are frustrated with that. And a C's not a bad thing. I mean, like C's equal degrees, man. Like,
I get you.
I expect better, and I feel like he could totally have a way better grade in the final 25 if he kind of just forces his will a little bit more. It's not even about shooting a better clip from 3. It's about having that intent. Like, do you actually believe that you're a threat when the ball's in your hands? You're a talented driver at the rim. You're quick. You're not obviously as fast as Fox, but you seem about as quick as anybody. And just to see him shy away from that is just, I mean, come on. You'd like to see him take that step in his second season, I guess.
Yeah, I hear you for sure. I was leaning more with the C plus, just because he has been our best defender. He hasn't really let us down on that end too much. His offense, of course, that's going to bring down his grade significantly. You said you wish you could give him an A just on defense alone, but I mean, there's 2 sides of basketball, right? And he's been underwhelming. You expected him to take like a bigger step, and we kind of see the offense in him, and he has shown glimpses this year of his like good offensive production. But that Indiana game was big in hurting his score, but his offense this year just really hasn't been what we were expecting. It just didn't really take a jump. It's almost like declined compared to his rookie year. So I'm going to say a C plus, just because I don't want to ignore the defense. He has been super good on defense, but for the sake of keeping the same score, this is one where I'm willing to drop down to the C, just because like he's an F on offense and like an A on defense. So it's a C.
I mean, that's fair. It's just one of those things where it's like, we know he can be just so much better. It's not a question of does he have it. It's like, dude, just find that pocket, that comfort zone where you know what you're doing. You've seen some guys adjust to being with Mike Brown, to adjusting to the new situation. I mean, like Barnes didn't have the first great 8-12 games of the season, but he figured it out. And Davion Mitchell has just seemed to, you've seen glimpses of it at times, but if that 3 ball isn't falling, he doesn't really seem to know how to get himself involved offensively. Mm-hmm. And it does kind of seem like he's kind of shied away from it almost more throughout the season. I mean, look at the difference between that game on Halloween in Charlotte versus the game at the beginning of the month in Indiana. It just seems a completely different player on the offensive end.
Mm-hmm. He does.
But, okay, we'll put him down as C.
All right.
Matthew Delicatessen.
Matthew Dellavedova. I'm like, honestly, like almost wanting to give this guy like an A minus. Like honestly, like for his role, He's a third string point guard. I almost just want to say an A, but I get it's it's hard to justify that. But this is what I was saying at the beginning of the year when it was Quinn Cook versus Dellavedova. I'm like, you want Dellavedova because he is a third string point guard and he's going to play that third string point guard position really well. Where Quinn Cook probably will try to weasel his way up to that second string. Where Dellavedova, he knows his role. He's that third string guy. He's always ready. When they bring Dellavedova in, he always brings an intensity, and it always seems to get the Kings back on track. My point is you bring Dellavedova in, and the Kings, they don't get worse. If anything, they get better because he's kind of a last resort kind of guy. And I don't know, he's a good leader, good locker room guy, and he just plays that third string well. He's ready when you need him, and he plays good basketball. But realistically, he is a third string point guard, so I don't know. I think you could set a B plus. I'm great, but I don't know, third string point guard for what he's doing. It's he's perfect for that role. I don't know what to say. He's an A plus for a third string point guard, but as a player, sure, I can say a B plus.
And just to make it clear, B plus. If I said C's equal degrees, baby, I mean B plus is really good. Think about C as average, meeting expectations, not really exceeding expectations, not really falling below them. Dellavedova really proved that he's not a wasted roster spot. Both what he does in those plug-in moments as the third point guard, which is part of his job, which he's done great. And then two, the fact that he's basically a player coach. The coaching staff of the Kings are more his colleagues than his authority, figures, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
He's terrific in that sense. The only reason I just keep him out of the A realm is because he is not if Fox went down for 2 weeks or if Davion Mitchell went down for 2 weeks, I don't know if he's proven that by the end of that he would be able to hold up. And also you'd have to take into account that you'd have other guys kind of patching up that hole, obviously Monk or seeing more Terrence Davis.
Very true.
So it's just kind of I keep him at the B. I don't go too overboard. But Dellavedova, talk about a guy that I think every NBA fan that watched over the last decade, everybody has respect for Dellavedova for good reason, and he's a valuable part of this team. And I did think about giving him an A minus, honestly, but I was just B plus. Let's not go overboard here.
Yeah, I hear you. And I think when we grade the positional rankings, it's we're gonna have to take that into account. He has a B plus, but it's Davion Mitchell's C outweighs it.
Yeah, the grades are not overall rankings of what their skill set is. Davion obviously is a far more skilled player than Dellavedova, but relative to the role and expectations.
Yeah. So what would you call the point guard group overall?
The point guard group overall, the point guards? That's a good name for them.
Yeah, the point guards.
Or are you talking about the final grade for them?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, I got this in front of me. I got a GPA calculator, and it puts them at a 3.10. Do they have the little?
Yeah, but are you weighting Dellavedova differently than Mitchell?
Oh yeah. That's right. We got to do that differently.
You should do 5, 3, and 1, or I don't even know.
I think that's what we did last time, right?
It makes sense. And that's how it should
5, 3, and 1. So that comes out to be a 3. Where's the? Do they have a sheet? What's a 3.26? Is that a B?
A 3.26 is a B minus. I think a 3.5 is a B, and then a 4 is an A, right? So
yeah, I guess that C is really holding them back, but
yeah, it is. But I mean, just because Mitchell has that bigger weight.
It is. That is true. I want to know what the heck a GPA 2 letter grade. Yeah, that's a B. That's a straight B. Is that what you said?
Yeah, I did.
All right, shooting guards. Kevin Huerter, the starting 2 on this team. I gave him a B plus. I was so close to giving an A minus. And I don't think I would get a lot of pushback on the fact that he'd get a B plus, just on that standing alone. Do you think that that's off? I mean, considering the fact that he has shown some wear down with higher usage and a bigger role, but he's undeniably been good. And at the same time, he's shown a lot of improvement in defense, but has also shown kind of some areas that still need improvement.
Yeah, I could even say Herter more of a B than a B
Hmm.
plus, just considering that he's declined like in his 3 point percentage. And I just want to preface this with like this dude came in to shoot threes, and he started off hot. He's so very hot, and he is what you said shooting like in the 20% this
Like
month.
29% through 8
Yeah,
games.
and it's just like the inconsistency brings it down for me.
Yeah,
And
it's
yeah,
a
he's
big
playing
one.
decent defense, but still hasn't been like incredible. I mean, I could see a B plus as well. I don't think an A minus. I don't think he's that high, just because he's just that three ball has just fallen off so hard. And yeah, he does other things well still, but at the same time, you need this dude to hit threes, and he's still shooting 39%. That's what you kind of expected. So it's just like a B. He hasn't like I think he's doing exactly what we thought he would do this year,
Yeah.
regardless of his inconsistencies. Like if you look at his stats, I'm like, okay, like so I was kind of assuming that's what Herter would be doing this year. He's kind of just like getting by, and I think that's a B student in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that that's actually a pretty fair assessment. I think, like offensively, I think you're totally right about the three ball when you think about how important 3 point shooting in terms of surrounding Sabonis and Fox with 3 point shooting, how important that was. It was obviously a priority of the offseason by getting Herder, Monk, and can't forget Murray in the draft. So I think that holds a lot of weight. I think that's a good point. And then it's just like the one thing that does kind of like I was really when he was coming into the Kings, I was like, man, this guy. When you watch some of the stuff he does defensively in Atlanta, it's like he kind of gets caught flat-footed, caught using his hands and a lot of stuff like that. And that's still more or less the same. Like he'll get in foul trouble. He gets beat by guys when forced into one-on-one situations. But off ball, he's been like a model citizen. He's been terrific. Just constant progression in terms of getting interceptions from the weak side, coming from that side to help, things like that. He's a very smart player. It's kind of just physically limited in some ways, and that was kind of the reason I gave him a B plus because you add all that together on the defensive end. Maybe that's not really exceeding my expectations, but the one element that kind of gives it the B plus for me, although I really do not have any issue giving him a B, but the one thing is it's like he's shown that he can still put up 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 points a game and go 1 of 6 from three. He doesn't need to rely on that outside jump shot. The chemistry that he's formed with Sabonis, I think that two-man game, I think that's the most frequently used two-man game on the team, more than Fox and more than Monk and more than anybody else. I think Murray would probably be next. I just think that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of interesting. But
Yeah.
I'm not gonna. I like what you said for giving him a B. And if we're gonna give
Okay.
Davion Mitchell a C, then I think we should. I think maybe I was a little bullish on her. I was afraid that I was too hard on Herter. My
No,
mom read my grades and she said, "I think you're being too hard on Kevin Herter."
she's a big Herter fan.
She is. Herter B, solid, very good.
I like that.
Malik Monk, off the bat, I gave him a B. I thought about giving him a B minus, honestly, but still kind of feel like even when he was going through his slump, and this was my factoring into it. Even when he was going through his slump, which was like him averaging like 10 points a game on really bad percentages, it's not like his facilitating dropped off. He was still averaging about 4 assists a game. And I think to some degree, the fact that he's the one guy on the bench that he's not going to win sixth man of the year. He's not even in the top 5. He's barely in the top 10, but he's in the top 10. That says something. And I think what he did at the beginning of the season, in terms of, I think he had such a huge role in when the Kings really got rolling early on, in terms of what he was able to do as kind of a primary facilitator. He was averaging close to 5 assists at the beginning of the season, actually, because of what he was doing when Sabonis would go off the floor. And maybe I don't factor that kind of stuff in fairly to everybody. I'm not saying that I'm grading everybody perfectly here, but I have a hard time not giving Monk a B. Kind of in that same sense that thinking about the expectations too. You always say that Malik Monk is streaky, but it's like he's always been. That's just Malik Monk. So in a
Hmm.
way, I feel like just based off of that, I think that's the reason I would go with B. What would you go with for Malik Monk?
No, I agree with the B. It is the inconsistency. I mean, there have been stretches, just like everyone, but where he's played like, man, a guy, um, six man of the year candidate for real. But then then goes on that slump, and he's like, oh man, like this is bad. And so it is the inconsistencies that bring him to B. Sometimes he plays like an A, and then some stretches he plays like an F or a D. And so, I mean, for those reasons alone, that's just a B guy. Where Herder's kind of like, yeah, he's putting up like those normal stats for a B guy. It's like Monk is more on the sense where it's like, man, he's like an A student one month, but like it's just a D student the next. And so, kind of like Herder, you kind of have to meet him in the middle a little. So I can see you going down to a B minus, but I think he's played more good basketball than bad. He's had more of those A months than like the D months, and then of course he's had like B months. Now I'm just like really going into these grades, but um, I think he's a B for sure because he's still an important player. He's doing well on the team. But like you kind of wish you could have given him A minus. So he has kind of, I guess, he's underperformed, but it's still not a bad grade. So I
No, not at
agree with
all.
a B for the Monk.
It's just it comes down to the fact that it's like not at all surprising that he's inconsistent. I would say like the biggest thing for Monk, or the biggest thing that you could maybe complain about. Maybe I didn't make a big enough deal about this, but what is he shooting from three this season? He's shooting like 32% from three.
Yeah, considering he
Like
came off like
that's
last year shooting 39.
yeah, and it's like I mean, aside from his free throw percentage, all his shooting percentages are down. But I don't know. I think that might have something to do with the fact that he's taken on a new kind of facilitating role. I don't know how much all that factors in. But that same thing that we said about Herder. He picked up three guys in the offseason to bolster the shooting. And Herder, like we talk about him being inconsistent and stuff like that, he's still shooting a pretty good percentage. Keegan Murray is awesome. He's arguably the best. He's on his way to being one of the best 3-point shooters as a rookie ever. And then you have Malik Monk, who's just like he never really had it going. I think he's had stretches of like 8 to 10 games where he's shooting like 40%. I think the right before he hurt his ankle, the previous 8 games, he's been shooting about 40%. But at the beginning of the year, he was like shooting 35, and everybody's like, "Well, that's going to go up," and it really only went down. So
Yeah.
I think that factors in massively. But then at the same time, it's like I never would have saw that he would have been the passer that he is for this team. And that's
Yeah.
remained pretty consistent. I mean, like, yeah, it was closer to 5 at the beginning of the year, but it's remained about 3.9 assists a game, about 4. And also, he's been way better than I thought he would be on defense. So, in a lot of ways, it's just like I feel like he falls right into that B realm. Just B.
I think so too. I think so too. So two Bs, I mean, pretty good. I mean, this was one of the higher,
Yeah.
rated groupings, position grouping when at the beginning of the season. So and then to cap it off with the
Oh,
other
yeah.
shooting guard, we got Terrence Davis, and I mean, I almost want to give this guy like a B plus just for his readiness in his sporadic minutes. He's been really good as that third string point guard, and like I said, a guy who can probably be a second string point guard on most teams. I'm saying point guard, I mean shooting guard. And so I think in that sense, just his overall readiness. He's usually playing with hustle, playing his heart out every time he sees the floor in these spotty minutes he's getting, and that's something you can really admire because he should be getting more minutes, but we just have two really good shooting guards above him, and so in that sense, it's hard to give him a B plus. Kind of like the Dellavedova, I want to give him an A minus for that reason. I mean, Terrence Davis has had bad games. His defense hasn't been the best, but or at times it hasn't been the best. But I think just overall, I think he deserves a B, just like his counterparts at that shooting guard position. What do you think?
I think you had it spot on at first. I think he definitely deserves a B plus. I don't think
Okay.
there's any doubt. We came into this season saying like this guy has a chance to really kind of like force his way into being a factor on this team. And in a lot of ways, he's done all he can. Aside from the fact that he's had spotty minutes and whatnot, he comes in, and once that rhythm comes back, sometimes he's the scariest scorer on the floor at times.
Yeah, I mean, like the Nets game.
Yeah, I mean, he's capable of that at any point. His value as a spot starter has been incredible. And to the point about defense, Terrence Davis, statistically, I mean, I don't read too much into the defensive rating and stuff like that, because if you do that, you start factoring in, you're like, well, then Chimezie Metu, because Chimezie Metu has an insanely good defensive rating. And the reason I would say that he probably has a great defensive rating, and there's probably other factors involved in this, but think about how much he plays with Davion Mitchell. Think about how much he plays with De'Aaron Fox, who on the defensive rating front isn't great, but ball pressure wise, he's been great. Monk has been a pretty good defender this year. And I think Terrence Davis is the third best applier of ball pressure on this team. He's definitely the most susceptible of Mitchell, Fox, and Davis. I think Davis is the most susceptible of the three to foul, which I think is one of his biggest knocks on defense. But from the moment in that game against Phoenix at home, where he had that like learning lesson that with Mike Brown, where he didn't step up, then he drew the charge. That's like a perfect microcosm for what he is on the defensive end. He's just constantly trying to be better. He's constantly trying to make a difference. And if he's not fouling people, which he kind of started to do in the second game against Phoenix right before the break, I think he had a couple of fouls there. I think all in the third quarter or something like that. That was about a week ago now, so I'm not 100% sure. But other than that, like, I guess what I'm saying is the biggest fault for him on defense is he's a little too zealous. Like a little overzealous with his activity. But I think if you look at deflections per 36 minutes, he's easily in first place on the team. He's a terrific defender, in my opinion. And I always said, and you pointed it out too, this guy's got a 6'9" wingspan on a 6'4" frame. That's not incredible, but it's something. He's got some length. You add that frenetic activity that he just plays with on every end of the floor and has had to do as an undrafted free agent. I mean, and then given the fact that he's the third shooting guard, he's not offered as many opportunities in the rotation. Relative to the role, he's been awesome. And all I can think about, especially after Monk hurt his ankle, and granted that's not a super big injury, but it's just like, man, you're just really happy to have Terrence Davis if you're Mike Brown. Because you lose Monk for a bit. I mean, obviously Monk's great, but well, you got Davis. It's not a big deal. It really takes the brunt of that hit off. And I think for all those reasons, Terrence Davis deserves a B+. I mean, he's just been great. He's just a constantly running engine. And he's had to stay ready the most for any opportunity that he's had, even more than Trey Lyles, even more than Chimezie Metu. And he more or less does pretty well, especially if he's got a rhythm going. When he's thrown into something after not playing for a while, you kind of give him a little bit of a benefit of the doubt, but he'll figure it out a game or two later. He'll get that thing going. And he's one of the better three-point shooter this season than Monk. So,
yeah.
I don't know. I have nothing but good things to say about Terrence Davis.
It's hard not to.
So I would make the argument that he gets a B+.
I'm very down for that B+.
Well,
so we got two Bs, a B+. I mean, I'm assuming it's going to be around like a 3-4. Oh no, probably around a 3-5, 3-6.
Oh no, two Bs and a B+ at the same credits, 5, 3, and 1. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Or should we give? Yeah, it's a 3.03, so it's a B- average.
What? How?
That's that's a. Yeah, never mind. 3.0 is a B. That's a B average, but it is a 3.03 because anything between a 3.0 and a 3.3. So shooting guard B. That's two Bs for the positional group.
It's two Bs. Makes sense. And I'm assuming that may be the highest score too. But
yeah, I don't think it's going to exceed that.
Yeah, it's I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
we'll find out in a sec.
We'll find out. I don't know.
All right, on to the little forwards, or the small forwards, as some call them. Harrison Barnes. I think what'd you give him, an A-?
I gave him an A-, which I feel like was the most contentious grade given out. Like, maybe A-, because I think, just in short, I think he's proven that he's the third most important player on the team. And we talked about him having less of a load and watching his stats fall. That shouldn't be an issue. I think the 3-point shooting, the start he had, That was undeniably disappointing. He also looked lost kind of at the beginning of the season in terms of that adjustment, but that didn't even go too long. That early season slump outside of the 3-point shooting really was not that extensive. It was just glaring because the Kings started 0-4 and Harrison Barnes had been one of the more steady presences on this team for the last couple of years. I think that played a lot into it. And at the end of the day, I think Harrison Barnes is the type of guy that Mike Brown has started at times to use him with De'Aaron Fox to play with the second unit at times to kind of level things out there. He's the type of guy that when things get stagnant or when things kind of get a little choppy on offense, he'll take it to the rim and get to the line or something like that. Whether they needed paint touches in particular or not, he'll find a way to kind of he almost kind of just shakes the Etch-a-Sketch. You just kind of start over. And I think for all of those reasons and the fact that he's providing a championship pedigree and experience that is an intangible trait, I don't disagree with. It's hard to prove, but I just think all those things together culminate into the fact that he's the third best player. Not the third best player. I don't know if he's the third best player in terms of like just skill level, but importance to the team. He's the third most important player on the team, in my opinion. And that might have something to do with the fact that he doesn't really have, like, if he gets hurt, and you're like, how realistic is it that you're going to keep Terrence Davis starting at the 3 or whatever the deal, or Herter starting at the 3 and TD at the 2? Like, you're going to be forced into situations. So that factors into it. And I don't want to give him an A- because of that, but I just think the other reasons kind of stand out to me, at least.
I agree. I could fall into that B+ category, but I mean, Harrison Barnes is Harrison Barnes. He's tried and true professional, right? And still even can be a go-to scorer. Even though I was kind of saying at the earlier this season or before the season started, I'm like, yeah, he's gonna do really good as a fourth scoring option. Like, he's still a guy that, man, like if you need a bucket, you go to this guy or he gets to the line and just his professionalism. I don't know if he's playing like an A- player, but also you don't really need him playing like at the top. I don't know. It's weird. He's a tough one for me, I guess, because it's like he's doing good in his role, but it is a reduced role at the same time. And so maybe it's different from years past where he was like that second scorer. But I mean, he's doing good in the reduced role, still shooting that 3 ball well, and just being that vet on this team that he always has been. So I'm good with an A- really for that. Harrison Barnes being Harrison Barnes, right?
Mm-hmm. And also, I would just say that like he's the type of guy that it's like, I don't know if you've ever worked at like a restaurant, but you have like that guy that comes in, he just started working there, and he just comes in, and every day he'll just be like, "What do you need me to do?" Because he just doesn't have a role in the kitchen or whatever the deal is. Like, what do you need me to do? And it's just like whatever it is. Because if you look at Harrison Barnes' like game log, it's like, oh, he had a 6 rebound game, and then he'll have like a 1 rebound game. But then the difference between that will be like, oh, but he scored 11 points in that first game and then scored 20 in the next game. He finds different things to do. And then like the first time they played against Toronto, and then I think it was the January win against the Lakers, like Harrison Barnes was great in that game because he guarded Pascal Siakam in the second half against Toronto and like was part of the reason that he was not a factor in the second half against the Kings. And it was a little bit of the same. He was guarding like LeBron all game. And I think in that Laker game I'm talking about, I think he won the defensive player of the game chain. He's just constantly doing different things. And maybe you can almost say that you can almost view it as an inconsistency thing for the reason it's like, oh, the rebounding numbers vary, the scoring numbers vary, but he finds a way to make that impact in a similar way that we'll talk about with Trey Lyles. It's almost just like he finds where the gap is and he fills it in, Yeah. He's like putty. You just put him in and he'll fill in whatever the hole is. You just sand it down a little bit and figure it out,
Yeah.
And I think in a lot of ways that's so important for a team. And I think come playoff time and that people maybe will be able to recognize that a little bit more. Not to say that people don't recognize that. I think Barnes gets a lot of credit for that. But I think for all those reasons, I give him an A-. And I'd totally I'm not like, if someone was like, no, he's a B+ or he's even a B, like I totally get where you're coming from. totally get where you're coming from. It really
Yeah.
depends on how you view that like slump and the shooting kind of aspect of things. Because even like he was great in January from 3, but I think in February he's also closer to 30%. So,
But I'm gonna go with you with the A minus. I think Barnes has been great this year. I really like Barnes. Like he's not throwing up like crazy numbers, which makes me want to dip his grade to the B plus. But it's like you don't need him to have the big numbers, and he's doing well in his role. He's doing super well, and yeah, he's had like on and off, but he's there every night. He's a guy who hardly misses games. A guy that you can have out there with any lineup, really. And he's going to play well. He's going to be a positive player on the floor. And he's a huge part of it. And he's like that only guy at the small forward position too. It's like him. Like, yeah, I'm like, who else? Yeah. Like Paula and Kessler or KE, KZ and KE.
KZ and K. Yeah, I like that. And HB.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, you kind of have to. Yeah, she's an A minus. That dude.
I do think the lack of depth behind him has to factor in.
Oh,
it has to.
It has to.
As we will demonstrate with these grades, KZ Okpala, I think he's a pretty standard definition of a C in my mind in terms of the fact that, like, yeah, he made the team. That wasn't necessarily a guaranteed thing. Although in hindsight, it seemed a little kind of guaranteed. But he's exactly who we thought he was. He hasn't really proven to be anything more than we thought he was. And he hasn't really proven that he's anything less, Comes out there, plays pretty good defense. Will foul, though. Has his moments where he'll look like he fits in on offense. But then he has his other moments where he's either clunking it off the side of the backboard from the corner or getting hesitant with his three-point shot, which is even worse. His kind of like understanding and awareness of where to be on the floor can be suspect at times. But that's like, I'm not surprised by any of that, It's like he gives you potentially a defensive option, but the fact that he's, maybe they're orienting him to get a little more playing time down in Stockton to kind of get a little more, focus more on the developmental side of things. I think that's good, and that's kind of where you wanted him to be. We talked about him as he's probably a guy you want to keep on the team because he has that potential to be an impact guy in a rotation, but he hasn't thus far proven that he can be that. Although he's shown small glimpses at times.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm a little hesitant to go lower. Maybe just because I don't like him because he started. I don't like KZ, but it's like I've always got like a bad notion of a KZ when it's like let's start him. And I'm like, why? Like, why not Trey Lyles? Maybe just because like I'm a big Trey Lyles fanboy.
Yeah.
And I didn't really think KZ Okpala 100% deserved to make this team in the first place. But, I can go to a C. He's been a good defender. He's a guy who rarely plays, and you bring him in for one thing, and that's defense. And that's kind of like where we're giving Davion Mitchell grade the C. It's like he's a great defender. On offense, it's like, especially KZ, it's like, he'll hit down a couple threes, but most of the time he's a liability on that end of the floor. Kind of the reason why he is unplayable or not really in a rotation in this league, even though he has that great defense, is that he's not good on the offensive end. It's kind of a bummer. So just for a guy in a very limited role, it's funny to call this guy even a backup. I almost want to outweigh this from 5-3-1 to 7-1-1 for Harrison.
Well, once we get to Kessler Edwards, I think we'll definitely adjust the credit system, I guess.
Okay. But I'm okay with the C for that reason. It's such a small sample size. He hasn't been awful. He hasn't been great. And just, it's a guy who's going to come in and play good defense. And I think that's, deserving of a C, really.
Yeah. Like I said, it's just, there's no surprises. It's just he's exactly who we thought.
Mm-hmm.
Which is not a bad thing. And again, credit to him for being on the NBA squad. Credit to him for putting himself into a position to be an impact player at some point, potentially. But C, I think for sure. Kessler Edwards, we could grade him, but I'm just going to say incomplete. That's the grade I gave him. He played one game. It looked good, but that's not I just don't think that's enough of a workload there to give an honest grade.
Yeah.
Besides, I gave my bold prediction that we'll have a grade to give him after the next 25 games. But I would put incomplete. We'll just not include him, but we'll give him the mention here. But I do think that if we're giving Harrison Barnes 5 credits for him, KZ Okpala is going to get 1. And, oh, look at that. An A- at 5 credits and a C at 1 credit. By golly. That's a B plus.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously very weighted on Barnes, but so we've talked about the lack of a backup small forward. Because I remember going into this, we were Kent Bazemore is being rated in this.
Yes.
So,
well, let's see what happens if I put a 1 credit in as an F. They don't have an incomplete or like a withdrawn or anything. Okay, that really
you get an F,
down.
Kessler. You've been here one game.
Well, how about we give him? How about we put him at C at 1 credit?
No,
because I don't know. This is a small forward group just because of Harrison Barnes, and we have to factor in the lack of depth somehow. Because that comes out to be a B plus, and now that's going to be the highest graded.
And it's just a weird position. I mean, I don't know. I'm fine. It doesn't matter at the end of the day.
We're gonna give Kessler Edwards a C. If we're gonna put that as the baseline, I'm gonna give him a C because I don't feel comfortable giving the small forwards a B plus. This is exactly how grades are decided, kids. You should not trust your teachers.
Yeah,
they're sitting around drinking wine. They're being like, "What do you think about Edwards?" Edwards a good kid. I know his older brother was cool, but I don't know about this one. It's probably how it goes. But okay, well, so the small forward group will give him a B, which I still think is kind of generous, given the lack of depth.
Yeah.
But
oh well.
That's how it works. I don't make the rules. Okay. I guess it's just going to be Keegan Murray and Trey Lyles because Metu's in the center group now.
Yes.
So this actually has a potential to be really good then.
Yeah.
Keegan Murray. As a rookie, what do you grade him as? Considering everything. An A.
He's an A.
No, that's
no doubt. No doubt that dude's an A. He's a rookie. He's the only rookie starting on a playoff team. And he's also might break the rookie record in 3-pointers. And already broke the Sacramento Kings rookie record. He is exactly why the Kings drafted him. And he's fit in. I mean, not exactly why. You definitely expect more from Murray down the line. But as a rookie, he's playing just as good as Barnes and Herter at that like 3-and-D type of player. Maybe not just as good, but he's arguably the best 3-point shooter out of the 3 of them this year, and that's saying a lot in itself. He's just fit into the role, the rotation, exactly how you needed that power forward to be this year, and you can't overlook that, especially as a rookie. And he definitely gets a little higher grade as that rookie because it's a rookie, right? So he's just been amazing. I've been really happy with Keegan. Even in his slump in November, he hasn't really looked back since.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I struggled with, and I gave him an A minus, and I think that was pretty easy to just give him an A, give him something in that realm up in the highest echelon. The only reason I was like hesitant to give him an A, I start thinking about it. Then I'm like, well, think about the other rookies. What's the one thing that stands out that's a big difference between Keegan Murray and then Paolo Banchero and Ben Mathurin is the top 2 for rookie of the year right now. Like those guys are uber. I mean, like not to say that Keegan Murray lacks confidence. He seems like a very confident guy. Never got down on himself through his November slump. Has only responded throughout the season. If anything, he likes tough love. Those are all good signs for a player's confidence. But it's like sometimes you watch Banchero and Mathurin, you're like, these guys sometimes act like they've been playing in the league for years. And just kind of comparing them to the rest of the rookie class, I feel like I use that as kind of a reason to knock them down to an A minus. But I would not, if you're strongly into giving him an A, I see no reason why not, honestly, other than
no. Let's knock him down. Just take a stroke on his ego. At the end of the day, I'm gonna grade him as a rookie and as a player. He is consistent at times, and as a power forward, I wish he would get some more rebounds. I'm gonna knock him down to an A minus for those two reasons.
I would also say this: it's like if you asked his dad, or even if you asked him, like I don't even think he would be grading himself in the A range. You know what I mean?
That's very fair. No, you're 100% correct.
But so okay, we'll put him down as an A minus, which is still really good.
Yeah.
Trey Lyles.
Trey Day.
I don't think we're going to have much difference here. I don't think we should. Yeah, I mean, I gave him an A minus only because I don't know. It's hard to get. Fair. You almost want to give him an A. It's just like A is just such a good grade.
That is fair. That is fair.
But I would say this. I mean, there's a reason that he would be the only person off the bench that gets anything above a B plus. And that's because he's been the most consistent in terms of both ends of the floor in what he does. He's just been the most consistent contributor. And he always has a way of impacting the game in a positive manner. I mean, I think outside of Barnes,
little mistakes too.
Yeah, outside of Barnes, it's like talking about basketball IQ. He's got one of the best basketball IQs on the team.
Easily.
And as a guy off the bench, that's huge. You know? I don't know. We've always known throughout his whole career that he's been a great rebounder. He's got the body for it, all that. And he's been a good rebounder for this team. He's always going in there. Sometimes when you see the Kings getting away from boxing out, from getting all in on the boards, you know, the two guys, and they're not always out there together, the two guys that are constantly on the boards is Domantas Sabonis, the leading rebounder, and Trey Lyles. Whether he's coming down with it or not, he's always down there fighting with one or two guys, battling for a rebound. You can always point out constant moments for that. But the rebounding hasn't even been the best thing. It's been the three-point shooting and the defense. And the three-point shooting has just been – it's been great. It's pretty much what we expect because he's shooting 35 or 36%? Let me get it right here. He's shooting 36%, which is about what he shot in his 25 games with Sacramento last year. Overall, with Detroit and Sacramento, he shot 32% from three. I mean, that's just been huge. He's really been one of the more reliable options from beyond the arc this season. And then the same thing to that kind of basketball IQ. He's one of the best team defenders on the team. And he's solid as a power forward. We've seen him as the small five. Whatever you need him to do, he does it. And I don't know. I would almost make the argument that he's been the best bench player. I mean, I think that's just.
I think so.
He probably has been. Absolutely.
Yeah. He's
most consistent by far.
Yeah.
We just keep saying the same thing about Trey Lyles because
we love Trey Lyles.
As soon as he got that start in OKC late last year,
yeah,
and he scored 20 points or something like that, and it was like, he's been that guy's legit. That guy, you have that guy coming off the bench, that's great. And this is what I said in the article for the grades, which you all should go read and get angry at. It started off by saying it's bordering on absurdity that after 24 games in Sacramento late last season, including 20 starts, Trey Lyles got stuck with 2 did-not plays in the first 4 games of the season, with one of his lone appearances being in mop-up time. When you think about it under that context, you almost kind of want to give KZ Okpala a lower grade. How is he getting DNPs? That was crazy. I remember. I know. That was so crazy.
I don't know what was going on. I don't know why he was getting DNPs. It made no sense.
But easy A minus, and I think that's going to make this the highest. If we give 5 credits and 3 credits, 3.7, that's a pretty good GPA. Jeez. That's an A minus. I mean, both of them are A minuses. By golly,
hey,
I don't think was the power forward position rated that high.
I don't think so. It couldn't have been.
No. Because we had Metu in there.
Mezzi?
At the beginning of the season. Which that's a nice transition into the centers. We got 4 guys. 2 guys. One guy that is an all-star. One guy that plays, surprisingly, but also compared to the rest of the field, not so surprisingly. And then 2 guys that I think we prefaced it by saying earlier did not get very good grades. I guess we'll start with the all-star. Sabonis, A for all-star. You know.
Oh yeah. I mean, standards
are. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, I was gonna say I might even say an A plus. I just think he's been that good for us. Really. I mean, he's everything and more. Really. Like the third seed, we're the third seed because of him, and also a lot of underperforming teams in the West. But I mean, I think if Fox gets an A, and or an A plus, I think Sabonis gets an A plus.
That's fair. But I factor in what I said about De'Aaron Fox getting an A plus. I said he gets an A plus because he really did exceed my expectations. Like I kind of I expected Domas to like 18, 19 points a game, 12
Yeah,
rebounds.
but it's more than stats for me. Mm-hmm. It's more than that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see why not. I mean, he's like I said, this whole bridge collapses without him. So, and he's playing with a fractured thumb, which I mean, like people just throw that out there as a token thing, but I mean that means something. I mean,
yeah, why not? That's my name spelled backwards.
What that is, Tony. That's interesting. All right, I'll give him an A plus, and I really have no problem giving an A plus, given the fact that what is about to follow is not going to be pretty.
Chimezie Mamba.
We were kind of talking about it a second ago. C plus is what I gave him in the grades, and it's a very interesting situation with Chimezie Metu because in a lot of ways. We were talking about at the beginning of the season whether or not he had a place in the league. It did not seem as if he had really shown that he definitively did, and that if you could get a replacement for him, there's no reason to keep this guy. I mean, you could easily find somebody that does what he does with maybe a little bit of a higher ceiling. That was our argument. Yeah. Well, to his credit, he's proven that he does have a place in the league, that he has some value doing certain things, and in a lot of ways, he's exceeded personal expectations. But it's hard denying the fact that even if he's exceeding expectations, even if he's kind of worth applauding given what we were expecting out of him prior to the season, you have to take into account. It's impossible to ignore the fact that despite that, everybody can agree that you still need to upgrade behind Sabonis. And I think you combine all that together, you mold it down into one snowball, and then that comes out to be a C plus. And I wouldn't go any higher. I'm not even thinking about going higher than that. I think a C plus you could make the argument that that's maybe a little generous. But if we're talking about C being like flat, like average, absolute average, I give him that plus just because of the factor that we were kind of like, I really don't know what Chimezie Metu is going to bring to this team. And he's done some things for this team. Whether or not we want to see him do that.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I'm okay with that grade. He stepped up. You didn't want him to be your fourth or your third string center. We went into the season thinking it was going to go Sabonis, Holmes, Len. And so him to step up and have that consistent role as number two, as we've seen Holmes flounder and Len just, rightfully not getting any minutes just because he'd get eaten up alive in this Mike Brown scheme. I'm okay. Would you say a C plus? Sorry, C or a C plus?
C plus.
And as much as I give hate to Chimezie, I mean, I will, applaud him for stepping up into that backup center role. I mean, it's not his fault at the same time. That Holmes has been terrible, and he's had to play more than we hoped he would. So I'm okay with that grade in that sense.
Yeah. And it's like, don't get it confused. He's never the reason the second unit is playing well. He just kind of is along for the ride.
Yeah.
And he can hurt you. I mean, he hasn't really done that since he's gotten the second center spot back. I think that was against Orlando in mid-January. But since then, he seemed like he lost the starting center or the backup center job rather in Toronto in December, and he was just playing outside himself. So he's still a risk too of doing that. And so I think how he closes out the second half of the season, but whether he closes out the second half of the season as a backup center still kind of remains to be seen. Kind of just moving on from Metu and transitioning there, talking about the next guy, the one that Tony had the bold prediction to say, because Chimezie Metu is so unexceptional as a backup five. I think that's a kind way to say it. Rashawn Holmes, in Tony's opinion, could or should, or not maybe should, but will end up with the backup 5 spot, despite the fact that he's been absolutely horrible. What would you grade Rashawn Holmes' first half?
A straight F. Just straight F. You go from being a very, solid center who was like led the league in field goal percentage combined over his last 2 years, and then or maybe the 2 years before last year, and just being a fan favorite, everyone loved him and stuff, and man, just to like becoming just non-existent on this team and this rotation. It's just been so. I mean, it's the biggest disappointment of this year by far for this team. Not even playing any minutes at all, being unplayable. That's an F. That's 100% an F. We were so excited for like this center and the depth and what he would provide for that backup center depth. Jeez, like when Chimezie Metu's playing over you, you got some issues. So I don't see why he gets anything higher. He had one good outing against the Lakers as a starter, but I mean that's not his role. He's a backup, should be night in night out, and he's not. And he's had the chance twice now to keep it, lost it both times. So. I think he's not. He's an F. He's just a straight failure. Sounds a little rough, but that's what F stands for, right?
And that's why I did not give him an F, because I'm just like, well, he's still in the league. Like, it's not like he did. It's not like he's had any moments of I just don't. I feel like an F it's almost harder to dole out an F on a guy, but he's like I said it in the whatchamacallit, like he comes about as close as ever. You're not performing in the role that you're expected to play, that you should be able to play, based, going from a starter to a bench player. Arguably his best trait, energy, being that fan favorite, would play into his benefit in that role, and in a role that you'd play somewhere between 9 and 14 minutes a night. Energy should be easy to muster, and it just hasn't. He's been really bad defensively. He'll foul. He's been awful, and he's the 5th highest paid player on the team. But I'm just like, I don't know if you can give him an F. I don't know. I wouldn't give anybody an F. An F just seems like that seems harsh.
Man,
that's for no reason. That's no reason.
It's been a harsh season, man.
I know. He has.
So what are you saying? A D minus?
Yeah, just on the principle of not giving him an F.
Fine.
And I get if that just makes people scratch their heads. Dude. I don't know. Okay, he did. He had the double against the Lakers. We'll talk about the first game against Denver, but you can't forget he played well in that game too as a bench player. He did get the primary amount of minutes as the center in the end, and I think he finished the game and everything like that. And there was a second there. I think at the end of going into the new year, there was a second there where it kind of seemed like he was playing pretty okay as the backup 5. And I just feel like if you're gonna have like those kind of moments, which feels like less relative to the amount of minutes they've played. But that's more positive moments than other guys have given. I don't know. I'm not trying to make excuses for Rashawn Holmes. He's had a horrible season. Like I said, the Kings are getting absolutely nothing out of their 5th highest paid player. But I'm going to be a stickler here and not give out an F.
Okay. No, it's fine. I get you. I hear you. I don't agree, but I'm willing to go to a D minus. I mean, whatever. It was D minus F.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, the difference here between D minus and F has we're not even arguing based on the merit. We're just arguing about how we view an F. I just view an F as like a failure. You shouldn't be on the team. Like, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
I don't know. But we'll put him down as a D-. I'll admit that I'm right. No, I'm just kidding. But coming to probably the least seen player on the roster, because when he comes out to play, you probably have already turned the game off. Alex Len. And
oh my god,
I think we said this on the podcast already, but to kind of summarize, Alex Len we came into the season saying that in a similar light as Matthew Dellavedova as the third point guard, Alex Len is a good option for a third center. It's a spot in the spot on the roster rather, where you're not going to see a lot of minutes, hopefully, because that would mean health issues for other guys. And he provides this kind of like experience. He's been in the league for a long time. He has undeniably good size. You know, he can play in the pick and roll. There were things to say about like him being the third center, but I think that in the moments that we've seen him, which have not been a lot, granted, if he's not playing against a big center like Jokic, where he can just kind of like bang with him in and around the paint area, he just doesn't fit into the modern NBA. And again, I would point to the game in Charlotte on Halloween, which, I mean, like, based on this conversation, people are like, what is that, the only game you ever watched? But I just remember it's a great example. It just happens to be another great example for Alex Len. You could see that he lacked speed. If he got switched off onto somebody in some situation, he gave you no chance. You know, the Kings try not to play so much when Sabonis is out there. They try not to get Sabonis to switch as much. But if Sabonis has to guard somebody, he'll give you an honest effort. There's so many moments where Sabonis puts on pretty decent showings on defense. You could maybe say the same thing about Metu. I mean, Metu's switchability is pretty decent. I mean, that's one of the things, his versatility kind of makes him an interesting player at the backup five. And then Holmes is, I'll just say with Holmes is a better athlete than Len. It's just Len is a liability at a certain point. He doesn't have speed. He doesn't have recovery speed. You can totally nullify him. He's a classic rim protector. Well, take him out of the restricted area, and then boom, you've just freed up all this space. You can nullify Alex Len easily, and I think for that reason, I think he's fallen off. He's less useful than I even imagined at the beginning of the season. I think we were too kind to him, and it's not an indictment of anything. I think the game has just changed, and it's just not. It's not a 7-footers, a big towers, NBA anymore. I don't know if he's going to get signed anywhere else after this season. I think he'll probably be. I would be surprised if he did. Maybe that's kind of a kick in the balls at the end there, but that's why I would say he gets a D+, which maybe, I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, we were kind of talking before, or was it on this podcast?
I think so. This is a long one.
Yeah. And I was kind of like, he deserves higher. I almost want to push for incomplete for him, like Edwards, just because, dude's not really given a chance. I personally thought he did okay versus Jokic. He fouled a little much, but I mean, it's also Jokic, It's like, here you go. Like, here's your first action in a month after being ill. Like, go up against a 2-time MVP, back-to-back MVP, reigning. So, and I personally thought he did well. I was kind of confused why he didn't play as much. They kind of pulled him. Even though he had foul trouble, he never came back in with fouls to give. And he was just set up to fail in Mike Brown's system. And I wouldn't say it's his fault, but at the same time, it kind of is. He's just, like you said, he's not a player in the modern NBA anymore. And I don't know if he's going to get picked up either. If he was any faster, he'd be slow, and that's just not how it's not how the NBA is anymore for a big. So,
and I would put it this way. We're talking about, you have a gaping hole, so to speak, at the backup five. Mike Brown wants to say that he feels bad for Alex Len, that he hasn't given him a chance. Given the hole, if you really thought he had a chance, you'd have given him a chance. Like, sorry, you're not going to convince me otherwise. There's been so many moments where they've needed to bounce around, and there's a reason they went to Keita before. Keita's a classic rim protector in a lot of ways too, but he can run the floor. He can move a bit. Alex Len just can't do that. And with the pace that you want to play specifically on this team and the reality of the league as a whole, it's just, I don't know. It's Alex Len. I mean, like, it's kind of the story of him in his career. He just never really, things never really worked out in terms of his promise coming out of Maryland. So, D plus. It does feel weird giving like Chimezie Metu a C plus and being like, Alex Len, D plus, work on it. But that's the way it is. What are we giving? One credit to Holmes and Len?
No, let's just weight these like 7-5-3-1.
7-5-3-1.
Yeah,
I can. I could do 70, 50, 30, and 10.
No. No, yeah.
7-5-3-1.
It's the same shit.
Yeah. Calculate. Ooh. 2.8.
Man, and it's crazy with your best player.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what we were talking about was a gaping hole. Yeah.
Yeah. But positional group, and that what's a 2.83? That's a C. That's a B minus, actually. Would you look at that? B minus.
Hey, that's the worst grade, and it says why the Kings are the 3rd seed in the West.
I was just about to say. And I think that given all the positional groupings, I mean, if we just put everybody at the same credit level, each of these positional groupings, we can get a final grade for the 3rd team in the Western Conference.
Let's see it.
I think that does it. Calculate. And so, the Kings are a solid 3.0, 8 GPA student, which is a beautiful B average. I think that when we were kind of going through and we gave Bs to the first 3 positional groups, I was almost tempted to say that the team as a whole is a B. Maybe a B plus, but a B. Do you think that it should be higher?
No, I think they're a B. And they're, like I said a little earlier, they're the 3rd seed in the West, but it's also a very weaker Western Conference this year. Like last year, they'd be, I think, like the 6th or 7th seed at this point. So I'm fine with a B. I think they're a playoff team. A B is a playoff team, in my opinion. And I think that just, they're not a contender. They're not that finals contender yet. I think they can make a move next year, or maybe Keegan Murray gets better and they jump up to B plus, A minus, and kind of get a little more serious. But I mean, for a first year playoff team, for that hasn't made the playoffs in 16 years, I think a B right now, I mean, that's just really good. It's solid. I'm very happy with it, and I think that's where they are. They obviously have their strong points on the team, but they also have, their holes as well. So,
right. Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. And this is maybe a team that I think that even if they're getting a B, I think they get on the honor roll, because I don't think a lot of people expected them to be this good. I mean, I think a lot of us expected the team to be pretty good. I still think they've exceeded expectations in a lot of ways. I think a B right there in the middle represents that. Not overwhelming, because I think you and I and others still had pretty good hope that this team could be one of the better playing teams or a playoff team. And like we said last week, even with the tougher Western Conference, there's still a pretty good chance this team can finish 5th or 6th in the West. So it's really all dependent on how that second half goes. And I tell you what, I can't wait to grade these guys again to end the season.
Man, that'll be fun. These are always fun ones to do. It's kind of just seeing where everyone's at. It's just fun to grade, I guess, judge other people.
Yeah.